All right. Well, welcome everyone to another thrilling Agile Kickabout from the friends and family at Agilicis. We have a big group today, which will be great. We've got back by popular demand, Johnathan Lucky from our last or previous podcast, inundated with 3 emails asking him to come back. So welcome back, Johnathan. It's amazing to have you here. And delivery director from C Prime, we've got Lydia Hawthorn joining us. We've worked together before and never shy to put forward her ideas. So thank you, Lydia, for joining us. We also have head of technology from Big Agile, Sergio Gove, who's well versed in the world of Scrum Masters, and of course Maggie and Paul, both consultants from Agilicis, joining us today. So the the topic that we discussed last time, Lucky, when you were on, was Scrum Masters and Agile coaches. Are they still needed? So if you haven't seen that video, go and watch that one. But the conclusion, really, I'm not going to ruin it for you, I hope, was yeah, we do need Scrum Masters. They're not always used in the right way, and when they're not used in the right way, that question comes up: is do we still need them? So given that we do still need them, the question at the end of that session came up with, well, if we need them, and there are a lot of people out there that call themselves Scrum Masters, how do organizations, when hiring Scrum Masters, make sure or ensure that they get good ones? Because we know it's easy to hire bad ones. So on that opening, I'll hand directly over to Johnathan to kind of complete the end of his last sentence with the opening of this one. Johnathan, how on earth do we ensure that we get good Scrum Masters?
Well, yeah, kind of like where we had ended off in the last one about, I think we said the words, many are called, but few are chosen. And I think to expand on that a bit is, one of my compatriots, we were talking about hiring Scrum Masters, and we were like, well, what are we looking for? And, we're not necessarily, what we want to know is, does that person have a sort of spark? Is there, and then what does the spark mean? Does this person truly understand what the values and the principles are? And then do they truly understand how to put the philosophy of Agile into practice in an organization, or in order to generate business results of some kind? And it's like, at the end of the day, if they don't have that, it doesn't matter how well they know Scrum, and if they can quote the Scrum guide back and forward, and they know every single framework out there. If they don't have that or something like that, then it's probably a big sign that they're not right for the job.
Okay, so having recently been part of the recruitment process for a Scrum Master, I know from experience that unfortunately the initial stage of the process of recruiting Scrum Master is, as the employer, you put the job description together, you put it out there, and then you get inundated with CVs, paperwork, right? Words on a paper. How do you cross that first hurdle? If you're looking for a spark, is there anything in a CV, in something that's written rather than communicated, that can give you little hints? Is there any good signs, but also red flags of things that you can see on a CV to kind of sift through the majority and then invite them to feel the spark later on?
I think what good Scrum Masters do is realize the business value that they add. So in the same way a salesperson would be able to write down their big sales wins, the times they hit target and exceeded, they understand the data-led value of what they do and how it impacts a business positively or negatively. In a CV, I want to see that thought process happen. I want to see their Rolodex of wins, not because one win is better than the other, but it shows an understanding of how they turned the dial of an organization. And I think too often bad Scrum Masters sit in a corner with their team, and their team likes them, but they're not affecting any change for the rest of the business or the wider Agile implementation. And that's what I don't want to see. I don't want to see siloed Scrum Masters. So in a CV, show me what you did to change that business for the better, and brag about it. Don't be quiet. Don't wait till you get to interview level A few well-placed metrics and wins in a CV can go a long way at drawing attention.
I think that's exactly right, and also that at the heart of it, we're looking for a servant leader, aren't we? And we're looking for someone who can be a truly ubiquitous servant leader throughout the organisation. So when people see them, they think, "See that guy? He gets the job done. It doesn't matter how it happens, but he gets the job done." And actually, someone who is a true servant leader, up and down, left and right, across the whole gambit of the business within which they operate, will very quickly develop the kind of acumen that you're talking about, Lydia. And it's very easy for people to sit back and say, "Yeah, I'm a good Scrum Master because my team never get disturbed and they get on with the job." But that understanding of the value that is actually brought to the table by what they do is absolutely crucial. If it's not there, then they're not delivering it, because if they are delivering it, they'll understand it and they'll know it.
Yeah.
Okay, so just to unpack what you're saying there, because I think there's quite a few nuances that I'm really interested in. So if you see a CV and it says, "I have, through the implementation of agile practices and my greatness, doubled the revenue of the company, increased the time to production 20 times. I smashed this, I did that." Is that a good Scrum Master necessarily?
Well, I think to me those are not the metrics that they didn't on their own double the revenue of the business, but you have got okay, so because we were able to reduce the time taken to provide bug fixes by case study tweaking this element of the process, we figured out that the cost of each bug fix is X, and we've reduced the time to market for those. And we have found that as an indirect consequence, the reviews of our app have gone up on the App Store, and I had a hand in that. You know, again, like a real servant leader would never say, "On my shoulders was this success, and only on my shoulders." So I think, to your point, Maggie, if I read that in the CV, I'd be like, "Who is this person?" And no, they'd sound pretty toxic and a bit out of touch. But yeah, they should have no shortage of data-led metrics to showcase how they have been effective inside of a business.
Right.
Is there something around the we, more we than I, than Lydia, right?
Yeah.
We as a team did this.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Obviously, I was part of it as a Scrum Master for that team. But when you were saying, Maggie, because of me and my greatness, then that's a no straight away from me, right?
Yeah, so you want to see that awareness for common business issues. You want to see that data-driven mindset of approaching issues, but also the presentation of, "Here, see how we fixed it." But then you want that servant leadership to also be reflected in it. You want to see perhaps words like enabled and supported and assisted, and like you said, Serge, like a we type of approach.
I think there's probably certain power words that you're going to look for, like, for example, if they talk about empowerment in their CV and understand it, that shows that they, you know, the way they use it shows an understanding of it. That automatically, to me, would think we're actually dealing with someone who understands the difference between a leader or a manager and a servant leader, and is almost certainly going to be the sort of person who would deliver the results that you're looking for, which is that cohesion between product and delivery, and the global understanding and direction that driving towards a common vision.
I really like that approach.
If so, if we agreed, right, the elements that we've said is what makes a Scrum Master a good Scrum, and it's obviously not the certification. It's not the fact that they can tick all the boxes and pass the easy exam. It's it's things like what we've been saying, right? So it's actually adding value, actually being a servant leader, affecting change, not pretending that they made the change, but indirectly, but the actions that they did with that team, change was made, right? It's the language they use. It's very much we, not us. And the as you said, Paul, the different power words and the fact that they are leaders and not managers. So we are good, right? We know what makes a good Scrum Master in that sense. But we go back to the question, how can organizations ensure they hire that person? Because you can say all that stuff on a CV. Anyone watching this video now can put all that stuff on a CV, and now they've done the same thing as passing the exam. They can put all that stuff on. How does an organization weed out those crap?
Yeah, of course, but then we need to not just focus on the CV then, because this is why we've ended up in this line of thoughts, because the question was directed at what do you want to see on a CV to catch those people at the beginning. I hate CVs. I think they're out of date. I think they're useless. I would much rather see somebody who has a website. I'd rather see people record themselves and deliver answers. I personally prefer that, because to me, the Scrum Master role is it's so based on competencies, core competencies as an individual. I've seen people who've been Scrum Masters for 15 years do a far worse job at doing it effectively than somebody who was picked out of obscurity inside a business just for showcasing the right competencies and been then given the tools to do the job. So I mean, if I was consulting with the business and they were struggling to hire good Scrum Masters, I'd immediately look at their recruitment process and what is it that they are trying to get the candidate to showcase throughout that. I would expect them to invite final stage candidates for a Scrum Master role to put together some sort of facilitated session, run it. I mean, it depends how much of a business is willing to invest in hiring good Scrum Masters. I would love to see somebody come in and facilitate a session in person and see how they do. But are companies willing to do that? Very rarely.
I think that's like, you make a really good point, Lydia, because that's the hiring process that we often follow. You know, the first stage is just a simple traditional interview with two other Scrum Masters. You know, we just kind of we ask them very, very tough questions about their knowledge around Agile and stuff like that. Usually what impresses us, if they have examples of stuff that they can share, examples of things that they have facilitated or done, or maybe metrics that they've done and tracked. Off the back of that is we do exactly that, is we go, okay, fine. The next stage is you're going to facilitate a retro with a real engineering team. And the reason why we do it is to look for three things. Like you said, Lydia, do they have the skills and competencies? What is their questioning technique? What kinds of retro techniques do they have? And even if they use a very basic retro, like a pluses and delta retro, that's okay. How are they using that retro to eke information out and to try and understand what is it that the team needs to improve? The other thing is testing their relationship with the team, because sometimes you might have a good Scrum Master, but they might not be a good fit for that team. They might not be able to provide that team what they need. And then the other thing I look for is, does the candidate feel that they can be of service to this team? You know, because sometimes a candidate goes, well, there's nothing, I'm not good for this team. And I've had that happen before, where a candidate's like, I don't think this team needs someone like me. I think they need someone like someone else, you know. And it helps. It actually really does help. Everyone gets to see how this person would be. Some people, and the recruiters often said, my last point is, would say, and other people were like, oh, that you're putting the candidate under too much pressure. But I would argue that, you know, experienced Scrum Masters need to be able to facilitate and lead in a situation where they have no power. All these people in this room have more power than they do, you know, because they're going to decide whether you're hired or not, you know. And if a Scrum Master can perform well under that situation, then they can facilitate a session with a board of directors, right? You know, because it'd be a similar power differential. So yeah, I agree. Like, that process is really, that recruitment process is important. And like Maggie said, you know, we've got to invest in it as well. It's the only way, you know, we got to invest in a good recruitment process.
Yeah. And not to dominate on this point, but I do think as well, just to delve deeper, because I've asked what you're trying to get us to say is, okay, but what does that mean that that person has to be able to do, is I would actually be concerned if a potential Scrum Master was going into that feeling pressured. Like, as a Scrum Master, that for me is really fun. Like, getting to go and meet a brand new team and see it as a new problem and figure out, you don't know anything. There's no context, there's no politics, there's no, this is what we've tried before. This is fresh. This is ripe for the picking. You should be easily able to facilitate and see it as a bit of a thrill of like, okay, cool, I'm going to get underneath the skin of these people in this half an hour session and leave them with something that is valuable and useful and of service. And if anybody is dreading that, that's a red flag for me.
I think that's a really interesting point you raise there, Lydia, because it is we're looking for core competencies. We're also looking for a type of person who will relish that sort of challenge, and is going to live and breathe the work stream that they're in to the point where they exude the confidence and the optimism and the drive that you need. And actually, so when we spoke earlier about you're looking for certain things on CVs, I understand completely where you're coming from, saying you don't like CVs. And actually, I think that, to me, in my eyes, if we're looking for someone who is going to be a good Scrum Master, it doesn't really matter what they've done before, unless we know we need a particularly experienced person to come in and turn around a team that is underperforming or something like that. But I think that we need to keep an open mind about the fact that the competencies and the personality traits that we're looking for can exist in any number of different people who may or may not have experienced the whole Scrum Master setup before, but would be absolutely amazing in the role, because they are that person who brings the energy, the vision, and the optimism, and the direction naturally to any circumstance they're put into.
Would you really you would take someone who's got the right mentality and personality and train them to be a good Scrum Master, or would you take someone who's a Scrum Master and train them into that type of personality that they should have?
The latter. So definitely, the former. Definitely they need to have the inherent qualities to be a good Scrum Master, because you cannot teach some of they can be taught, but not in an economical timescale. You need the person to have that initiative, that drive, that almost. Do you know what I was thinking earlier when you were speaking, Lucky? I was thinking X Factor.
Yes, yeah.
But that's a horrible cliche. And I know we don't like cliches on this call, but I think that there is a kind of je ne sais quoi that we're looking for, and to me, it shouldn't really matter whether the person has got a PSM qualification and whether they've got bags and bags of experience, unless the role particularly calls for that experience. We should really be looking at bringing in new blood and allowing that new blood to bring their own personality, and then developing the diversity of the organization. I don't know, circumstance will drive it, but I think that actually also has a massive part to play, is the fact that there are many ways to skin a cat, and there's many ways to be a good Scrum Master. So
in terms of, if we let's just put, even though I agree with you, Lydia, we're probably not going to kill off the CV just yet.
Well,
no. But I mean, saying that, Paul, we hired you at some point in the recent history, and Maggie. I've never seen either of your CVs. Probably shouldn't say that out loud, but I don't think so. Maybe it's a great idea, because you turned out to be amazing. So maybe that's a good idea. But apart from killing off CVs, what are we saying that organisations can? What tangible things can they actually do? So yes, they're going to see the CV, but you talked about, like, you talked about putting someone under some pressure, and Lydia, you talked about maybe getting them to facilitate a session. Obviously, you can't do that with everyone, and like you said, probably the later candidate. How do we get to the later candidates? How are we going to weed out these?
I think we can't minimize the role played by the pre-screeners, right? So whether that's an in-house team of recruiters or you're working with a third party, I think, and I, recently had done some employee branding stuff, which was really interesting to look at how that person who the candidate speaks to first is the salesperson for the business. So not only are they vital, because for the good candidates, you need that call to go well so that they're bought in, so that they don't then go looking at a load of other options because they're not phased about working for you. But the second thing, and arguably from a talent perspective, the more important thing, is that they know how to screen for these roles. So don't underestimate the time that it needs to be invested in upskilling and sharing knowledge and information with these people, whether that's third party or in-house, so that they have a true understanding of all the things we're talking about here. Provide them with case studies to show them examples of good Scrum Masters in the flesh. Have them go to, whether it be PI plannings or sitting in on retros with other Scrum Masters, show them what it looks like. Because also, especially if they're in-house recruiters, they're very unlikely to be specialized in your specific area. Maybe in big businesses, they'd be lucky enough to have that, but in smaller, more scaling size businesses, that's not going to be the case. So you just can't assume that they're going to know what to look for. And equally, as the hiring manager, you can't do it all yourself because you haven't got time. So you have to be able to trust them. And that's only going to happen if you really work with them to empower them to see what you would see if you were having the same conversation.
So if we were to be methodical about our advice here, what we're saying is ideally we want that in-person communication, but realistically not everybody has the time and resource to call every candidate in for a face-to-face interview, or even one of those really sweet, let's facilitate an actual ceremony with the actual team together. So realistically, we probably have a level of CV screening, and we've kind of highlighted a few kind of power words to look for in CVs, like empowerment, enablement, servant leadership, a lot of uses of we versus an I, and then the quality of the person reviewing those CVs and really knowing what to look for and really understanding what the things they're reading through mean in the real life context. So then it still feels like for most companies, there will be some kind of a step in between the huge volume of CVs, what makes it through that level of sift, and then the number of candidates that get called in for a face-to-face facilitation session. And I think my mind is going towards something that you mentioned earlier, Lydia, something like, what is their situational judgment? Like I've seen, I don't know if you've heard of the STAR interview method, but basically you give the candidate a situation and then they have to give you an example of a situation, describe the task at hand, explain what action they took, and then the R is the result, describe what was the outcome of that. So is that type of thing something that we can put in as like a second sifting tool to ensure that anybody who comes in for an in-person interview is of some level of quality?
I kind of, if I was asking questions at an interview and a Scrum Master gave me the star response, then great. If I had to prompt for a star response, is that really the type of Scrum Master I'm looking for? Someone that can't articulate a problem, what they did about it, and why it was beneficial.
Yeah. I'd also argue it's actually not specific to a Scrum Master role. Like, I'm expecting that from anybody that I interview and I ask them for an example. But of course, like, totally right. Like, that's going to show somebody who has, again, an understanding and an awareness of the impact of what they do, what the impact of that inside the business. I think if I was interviewing and I had to create some sort of matrix, right, where I was saying these are the 5 key competencies of a Scrum Master, and I'm talking about competencies here. I'm not talking about knowledge. I'm not talking about which qualifications they have or whether or not they've got business acumen or whatever. To me, some of the top ones would be diplomacy, the ability to leave a conversation, making sure everybody feels like they've won.
Mm-hmm.
I want somebody who's insatiable when it comes to problem solving, that there is not any problem they don't truly believe they could get to the bottom of. I want somebody who is empathetic and therefore will understand how important the culture and people piece is to a true agile implementation. I want a confident facilitator, and I want someone who has the capacity to be data-led and data-driven. If I were to have those 5 key competencies out in a matrix and I could score against them and list situations that they give as examples underneath those that perfectly exemplify where they've lived that value, I could be confident. Now, I'm happy for somebody to do that at a pre-screening level because I can be prescriptive about that. But as a hiring manager, unless you've gone to that level of certainty that this is what you need, how on earth are you ever going to communicate that to somebody who's conducting telephone interviews?
So with only 5 minutes to go, we need to start looking at wrapping up. But that's a decent, I'm going to say starter for 10, but really it's a starter for 5, isn't it? So they're the 5 key things that Lydia looks for. I wrote them down: diplomacy, problem solving, or at least getting to the root cause of a problem, if not being able to solve it, empathy, facilitation, and data driven. So they're the 5 things that you're looking for. I guess organizations that are looking for Scrum Masters might have a different set of 5, or they might have 3 or 6, but at least before interviewing or screening, figure out what those things are that you care about. Because some of our clients or ex-clients will look at hiring a Scrum Master, and either they'll ask us to do it, and anyone out there watching, feel free to ask Agilicis to help you hire your Scrum Masters for you. We're happy to do that. But either they ask us to do it, or they just go in blindly going, well, I know what a Scrum Master is supposed to do. They're supposed to be able to run a retrospective and do stand-ups. You could do that. Great, I'll hire you. They've got no idea what they're looking for. So good point, Lydia, actually figure out what it is that you want, and before even doing the interview.
You actually
sorry, go on, Lucky, go.
I was just saying, you actually hit on a really good point, is knowing what you want. Like at one point I was working with a business, and they said, hey, we want a delivery focused Scrum Master. So then my first question was, what does delivery mean? And they couldn't really answer that question. And so it was like, you need to be able to, like, it's fine to use a buzzword about delivery focused or whatever, but what is it that you're trying to get? What are you hoping? What better state are you trying to make the business as a result of hiring a Scrum Master? Because if you don't really have a vision for that, then you really don't know what value you're getting out of a Scrum Master, which again, you won't even know whether to get a Scrum Master. You might even get the Scrum Master and then think that they're rubbish or not valuable because you're not actually reaping what you needed out of a business, out of that individual.
But then are we saying not all Scrum Masters should do the same thing then? Are we saying we want different outputs and outcomes from Scrum Masters?
Different flavors of Scrum Master. And I think the answer is possibly yes, but I still think that there are core competencies that every Scrum Master must have in order to be half decent at the job, and if not fully decent, in fact.
Like, I'm slightly worried if we're saying slightly. I mean, worried is a big word here, but if we're saying people figure out what you need from a Scrum Master, isn't it common what they need from a Scrum Master? If you're looking for a Scrum Master, then isn't it obvious what you need from a Scrum Master?
I mean, well, in the generalist, like if it was me, I would have a skeleton Scrum Master JD. And if I ever had a really unique use case that was requiring someone specific, I would tweak that JD to reflect that. So a good example would be inside a product team where it is actually really important to understand the product that they're producing. And some people might disagree with me on this, but I think, say if it's a data project, for example, and they've never worked with data before, they're from a completely different type of background, I know that that person's going to struggle to get up to speed as quickly as somebody who did. And I might want to call that out in a job description. But again, like for me, that's just not, it's not competency based. It doesn't change the type of person they need to be. It changes the experience and the knowledge that they have about certain, you know, specific areas.
So I guess what I'm getting to is then shouldn't we, as people who know what a Scrum Master should be, what a skeleton Scrum Master should be, shouldn't we be saying this is what a Scrum Master should do, this is what you should look for in a Scrum Master? And then if you have specific requirements, Lydia, that's where you change them.
Yeah, and I'd say
so that could be something that Agilist helps with.
Diplomatic, good at problem solving, empathetic,
those 5 things.
Facilitator, data driven.
Because that's common, right? It's not just what you need, it's what everyone needs in a Scrum Master. It's what everyone needs in a Scrum Master, even if they don't know they need it.
Right. Yes, exactly.
But I guess just the point here for me to emphasize is, yes, the skeleton might be common, but then think about your culture internally, and even further from that, invite the person to come and interact with the team, like Lucky said, and think about how you structure that session, right? I think one thing that I really enjoyed doing, the whole team were really big Avengers fans. So we did like a little mock-up project where you had basically user stories to draw the different Avengers, and there were acceptance criteria of, I don't know what color someone's hat is, what shield they had, And we got the Scrum Masters to run that game with the actual team. And the team was very fun. They were relatively mature. They were very close, tight-knit team. They were very close to each other. And they had amazing fun playing that game. And you could straight away see the contrast in energy with some Scrum Masters that had more of a, they were not bad Scrum Masters, but had more of a serious formal approach. They couldn't really tie into that dynamic of the group. And then there were people who were super fun and jumped straight in and were annoyed that they couldn't play, right? Because they were like, I want to be part of this. This is so much fun. So I guess there is the skeleton, but also identify the opportunities to really assess the fit of the local culture.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, right? But at the end of the day, having these things in person, it is expensive, right? If you're involving your team, if you're involving, if you're trying to organize all of that, it is expensive, time consuming. And so there must be, I agree with Lydia here about investing time upfront in the upfront process. There will be things for sure that we can do to at least, we start with a massive pool, right? The minute you advertise Scrum Master, it's the flavor of the year, right? So the minute you advertise Scrum Master, you're going to get hundreds of chancers, even jokers that just give you CVs. You have to whittle it down, because then if you have a smaller pool, then it's easier to decide who you're going to see face to face and then who you're going to get the team to meet. Right. But there must be some quick wins, right? For example, for me, even a CV, I look at someone who says, I facilitate ceremonies. Like, that's a no for me. That's so straight away. That's so basic. So why would you say that?
I'll take that off my TV immediately. Thank you, Sergio.
Or servant leader.
I am getting virtual pokes from Erica to telling me to wind this up. So I'll ask either Johnathan or Lydia, whichever one of you wants to speak up first. We want a 10-second roundup of the advice that we are going to give to organizations when hiring Scrum Masters. How do they ensure they get a good one?
Are you going to take it, Lucky, or do you want me to?
I only caught the last part of that question because I cut off for 30 seconds.
Okay.
Lydia, you take it.
So it goes to me. What we're saying is, don't overlook the importance of prepping internal recruitment or external recruitment teams into what they need to look for. Don't base your decision on CVs entirely. Make sure you're looking for competencies later on in the recruitment process. Make sure you know what you want and have a clear idea of that. create some scoring matrix, whatever it might be, so that you're seeking out and listening for those examples where they're demonstrating the values that you are hoping they will bring into your business. And if all else fails, just remember my 5 top things, which are diplomacy, problem solving, empathy, a really confident facilitator, and being data driven, and you'll be all right.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, guys. What an awesome kickabout. Hashtag the Agile Kickabout.
One thing we've not really mentioned, and something that probably wasn't relevant for the discussion there, but I think is worth bearing in mind, is the fact that there's an element of it's horses for courses, and the organisation needs to understand exactly what they need for where they're at on the journey. It's because it may well be you've got a very mature organisation that could bring in somebody who's relatively junior and really make them fly high. But if you're early on in the journey, that's where you're going to want your straight off the shelf, really experienced Scrum Master to come and do what needs to be done. Likewise, you might be thinking you need a Scrum Master when actually you're not there yet, and you need something, agile coaches to come in and do their bit first before, if you're really early on the journey, or you might want us to come in and do work for you first. So I think that's really important, that's understood by the hierarchy of the organization.
That's a good point. So many times you see people saying, we're going to be agile now, so we're going to hire Scrum Masters, and we're going to just stand up.